Hello, so this is just a quick tutorial on how to use a heat transfer tutor. Once you've logged in and made your account, you have access to a couple different tools. So we have the chat feature, the My Content, the lectures, and the homework. The main feature of interest is the chat functionality. So in this case, going to the chat sidebar or chat page, we have access to a couple of different things. So we have a chat sidebar, which is this section. Basically just collects all your chat logs that you've had previously. It allows you to rename them, create a new chat, etc. Um, the actual main chat window. So chat window, just your chat interface to the AI. And finally, we have, I guess, like the resource section. So we have an info, resource, practice, final review outline. I'll kind of go over these one by one. So the main thing is that the tutor kind of works as like a general chat. So you could say, hello, how are you? And you should get like a little response. So the nice thing about this tutor is that the tutor's trained on Professor Sundar's lecture notes and also the homework he assigned throughout the quarter. So in this case, you could ask any specific question that you have about the course. So in this case, you could do something such as, can you explain conduction, or can you explain the main modes of heat transfer? Can you explain the main modes of heat transfer for me? The nice thing is that you get like the general chat response, just an overview of just conduction, convection, radiation, etc. The really nice part is that since it's trained on Professor Sundar's notes, you always get like a cross-reference. So in this case, when I go into the resources tab right here, resources is essentially just a tab that collects that basically just shows you anything that the AI retrieves. In this case, it's looking at the source PDF. In this case, it pulled up the most relevant lectures that cover the modes of conduct or the modes of heat transfer. So we have this one, and then you can just switch between them. So in this case, I have this homework, or not this homework, but this lecture, etc. Allows you to just kind of like review it real quick. Technically, you could ask questions about it. So if you ask questions about like, oh, like in this lecture they cover this, the AI should be able to answer it. Uh, yeah, so that's for the source PDF. But let's say I also wanted to ask some questions about the homework. So I could say something like, is there any homework that was assigned during class which covered conduction, which covered any of the modes of heat transfer? So in this case, I'm hoping that it's able to look through the homework. Yeah. So in this case, it actually pulled up some relevant resources based on this. So let's see what it says. The modes of heat transfer, not just abstract concepts. First law. Okay. Yeah, so in this case, once I asked it specific questions about the homework, it actually pulls up some of the relevant homework. This is a lecture, but it pulls up some of the homework that's related to radiation. Yeah, this is radiation. Same thing, kind of like with the source PDF, but this one's defined as homework PDFs. But in this case, it pulls up any relevant homework based on your query. Of course, the more specific you are with your query, the better the results. So always keep that in mind. It looks like it mostly picked up. This is like a conduction problem, right? Looks like a conduction problem. Um, yeah, it looks like a conduction problem. Either way, nice little cross validation. You could basically ask it any questions. You could also be specific about it. So I think if you do something such as, um, can you explain what homework one covered and explain how to solve these sorts of problems? You can be specific about the homework. So if there's a specific homework that you've struggled with, such as homework one, homework two, homework three, homework four, homework five. I kind of have it outlined. So in this case, when I asked it about homework one, um, it pulls up all the homework from homework one. You could tell based on like the little metadata right here. So it says homework dash one problem 5, homework dash 1, problem 3, homework dash 1, problem 6, etc. Um, yeah, so you could always review it, etc. You should be able to ask general questions about it. Yeah, so that's enough for the actual retrieval. A couple nice things you could do is, for instance, you could build a practice quiz. So, clicking on this, I basically just inject a prompt that says create a medium difficulty practice quiz with about three questions based on the current session, including answers and a brief explanation for each question. So in this case, it actually generated a quiz. This is now the practice tab. So for the practice tab, it essentially just renders any quizzes you've generated during this chat session. These practice tabs are confined to your current chat session. So if I open up a new chat session, it wouldn't have the same questions. It wouldn't have the same questions that you generate in a different chat session. That was a mouthful, but either way, there's an actual practice quiz right here. So in this case, in a steady 1D steady heat transfer scenario through a composite wall, if the thermal conductivity of the material layer is very high, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to click random answers. So I'm not really interested in it. So I'm just clicking A on all of these. Once you actually submit these, it'll tell you if it's right or wrong. In this case, I got number one wrong. The answer was B. Number two, the answer was C. Then number three, the answer was C. Yeah, it looks like I'm gonna fail this test. But um, either way, once you actually submit it, it actually gets saved. So this is actually gonna be saved in my content. I'll kind of go over that in a bit. Final tab would be the final review outline. These are essentially just concepts that Sundar wants you to understand uh, for the final. They're just quick little prompts that you could probably ask the AI to kind of help you in. So in this case, let me do basics of heat transfer, explain conduction, convection, and radiation. We already kind of did that. Energy balances, compare macro, integral, and differential energy balances. These are basically just prompt injections, so they're kind of like a little like I guess like a starting point if you're not sure where to start studying at. So in this case, it kind of goes over like the main ideas that you should probably know, some differential balance, etc. So hot plates. If I look at the resources tab, it should pick up new. Yeah. So in this case, it then retrieved the relevant lecture, so you could always read about it a little bit more. Actually, see Sundar's notes on it, so that's good. Um, yeah, you can review it, do whatever you need to do. Finally, let's actually go back to the practice. So I've already submitted this quiz, but let's say you wanted to review this quiz later on. This is where the my content is saved. So anything you've generated during a chat session basically just gets dumped here. Currently, this is just like a question dump, so all the questions are just re-rendered. Um, in this case, I could try again. So I think the answer was C. I'll just submit it again just to test. I got this one wrong, this one's right, and this one's right. Uh, yeah, so that's it for like the main chat functionality. Finally, there's lectures. So lectures, I basically just organize all the lectures for you guys. So in this case, all the lectures are just organized based on the date. So 331, 402, 407. From here, you have access to a couple things. These are essentially just cleaned up notes of Sundar's lectures. So you still have access to the original PDF if you want to look at this. But if for some reason, or but if for some reason you're like, I kind of want like something a little bit more formatted, we have two options. We have the Markdown file, which is essentially just like a summary of the actual lecture content. This tends to be formatted pretty nicely. There are some issues with it. Like for instance, it extracted the question. Um, it's a little bit nicer format. Um, yeah, so you could basically just kind of read this. It's essentially just like a cleaned up summary of the PDF version of Sundar's notes. The math formatting could be a little bit better if I had to be honest, but it might be useful. Um, it's kind of broken down into yeah. So these markdown files are essentially broken down into let me see. They're essentially broken down into like four parts. There's like a lecture summary, which is like the main summary of the lecture, essentially like learning objectives, core topics covered, prerequisites. Then there's a derivation section, essentially just a cleaned up, formatted version of Professor Sundar's derivations. Essentially anything he kind of derived during class. A little bit nicer. Questions are any like worked out examples he worked out during class. So in this case, he did like a resistance heater in the form of a thin sheet. Same thing, just like a nice formatted version of it. Let me see. Yeah, so basically just all the questions you kind of went over. And finally, some conceptual questions. So basically just like some conceptual questions, just kind of like test your understanding. They're kind of like relevant based on the given lecture. So in this case, according to the first law of thermodynamics, blah, blah, blah. You get the gist. Uh, so this is the markdown view. This is essentially just like a text file. Finally, there's lecture cards. The lecture cards and the markdown file are essentially the same, just that they're slightly different rendering. Uh, you might have a you might have a preference over which one you like more. But in this case, same thing. Lecture summary, so just like an overview of the topics. And from here, you should be able to just click through the cards. So in this case, I have this derivation, slightly formatted a little bit better than the actual text file. Additionally, it shows you where these derivations were found at, so there's like a reference. It's also shown in the markdown file. Let me actually go back. So if you're ever curious about where something's coming from, there's always like a reference section. So in this case, start page 0, end page 0. So we go to the PDF. It should be this page where the derivation originally comes from. This is just nice if you need a cross-reference over, especially if it's like, especially here's like a note as like a general thing. Since a lot of this content is like parsed using AI, there might be minor errors here and there. So always cross-reference with the original source PDF. If there seems to be anything that just doesn't seem right. Yeah, so here's like the derivation. You can kind of go back, and then here's like the actual question. So if you want to just test yourself, I think the answer is B. Let me see. Yeah, the answer is B. Yeah, basically just like another little quiz on like the actual lecture note. Same thing, you could kind of answer these. These don't get saved on my content, so they're only accessible on a per lecture basis. Conduction, whatever. Got this from. Essentially, same thing with the extractor questions. Extractor questions tend to be a little bit better formatted in the cards based on my experience, but even then, there's areas of improvement. So this section kind of looks kind of funky. But it should be nice if you're just trying to like work throughout a problem. Yeah, you should just be able to kind of click through it, do whatever you need to do. This kind of applies to all the lectures. So if you look at all the lectures, they should all have some sort of lecture cards, some sort of lecture cards, and of course the markdown file. Finally, there's homeworks. So the homework is essentially just a dump of all the homework you guys have done throughout the quarter. I still need to group them up by homework sets, but I kind of threw this together last minute. But same thing with the homeworks. So you have your original homework PDF, which should be like a worked out example. I also offer you guys a markdown file. This might be slightly better depending on your preferences. Essentially just like, yeah, this is kind of verbose to be honest. But same thing, lecture cards. You should be able to kind of like see it. The formatting still needs work, if I have to be honest, but if you're interested in looking at that, check it out. Uh, and finally, that's essentially like the main features of the tutor. On my end, I'm still like working through some bugs, like just some minor formatting bugs. Cleaning up, maybe add a couple new features here and there. But for the most part, you guys should have like a stable version of this app for your guys' finals. And that's it. Thanks.